one of the fundamental of the 39 malachas, one of the primary primary malachas, is the malacha of lush, of kneading dough. Now, the Gemara is going to get into a machlokas here as to what aspect is the kneading of the dough. Is it just the adding the water to the flour, in other words, the liquid to the dry, which now makes it into a conjoined mass, or is it an actual mixing of it? And is that the oraisa, the rabbanan, is a Torah prohibition, rabbinic prohibition? And then, what about foods that don't necessarily turn into a mass, a thick batter, but rather a liquidy, a thin batter? Is there lush there as well? Is there this kneading? And if so, is it the oraisa rabbanan or the rabbanan is a Torah prohibition, rabbinic prohibition? And this is going to come up in regards to what we saw in the Mishnah, that you can add water to mursinin, which was the basically like bran that you would feed to the animals, and adding this, adding the water, whether that counts as lush or not, or do you have to, because our Mishnah says you can add the water, but you can't mix it, which is seemingly the mixing as a part of the kneading, and there is no prohibition alone in adding the water to the dry substance, which is then going to turn it into a mass. So Amar Abaye, and this is about 7 lines from the bottom of 155b, Kuf Nun Hey Amud Beis. Amar Abaye said, Amrita Kamei Demar, I said before my teacher, which is Rabbah, Masnita Mani, whose opinion would our Mishnah be that says that you can add water to the mursinin, let's call it bran, to the bran, but not to, but you can't mix it. Va'amar li, and he said to me, Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, which we find elsewhere, that Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says that kneading is not only adding the water to the flour, meaning the liquid to the dry, but rather it requires also a mixing of that, not just adding the 2 ingredients. The Tani we learned. If somebody put flour into a bowl and another person comes and adds water to it, so the person who put the flour, even if he knew and intended for the other person to add the water, he didn't do anything, and therefore he would not transgress. The one who transgresses, the one who transgresses is the one that added the water, and in fact, he's entirely the one that transgresses. We've seen before, shnaim she'asu paturin, that if 2 people did the work together, the prohibited act together, it's going to be exempt. And we saw a discussion in the Gemara, if one could do it without the other, or both of them can't do it without each other. But in any case, in this case, where either one can do it alone, and one brought the flour and the other one added the water, the one who added the water did the entire thing, and it's not counted as if 2 people did it, because the one who just put flour in a bowl did absolutely nothing. Flour in a bowl is fine. The one who added the water is the one who did the entire act of lush, of kneading dough, by adding a liquid to the dry. Divrei Rebbe, that's the opinion of Rebbe Yehuda Anasi. Rabbi Yossi ben Yehuda, he says, no, you're not going to transgress the Torah prohibition, and therefore you don't have to bring a sin offering unless you actually mixed it after you added the 2 ingredients. After you combine the 2 ingredients. So the Gemara, so Abaye says, he challenges Rebbe. He said, maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's only true in regards to flour, which requires a kneading, a mixing of the flour and water after you've already combined the ingredients. Aval Mursa, but in bran, the lavar gibelhu, it's not really meant to knead. You just add the water to the bran, and then that becomes the mush that you feed to the animals. Perhaps that's where it doesn't require the gibel, the mixing, the actual kneading of it. Just adding the water, even Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda would agree, is the Torah prohibition because there is no needed other step. Now, for Rabbi Tzvi Fischer, so Gemara says, no, that we can't think that. the Tanya, because we have an explicit brisa, the Tanya Behedya, Rabbi says you cannot put water into the bran. Rabbi Yehuda, he says you may put the water to the bran, and therefore our Mishnah too would then, as the brisa tells us, would be the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the definition of the prohibited act of kneading is not only the combining of water and flour, the liquid and the dry, but rather it requires a mixing of them as well in sort of to combine that. And even in something like mursin, a bran, which really doesn't require it for its own function, nevertheless, that's not going to be the act, the prohibited act, the Torah prohibited act, unless you actually did all three steps. You put the dry, you put the liquid, and you mix them. Another wheat or flour that really doesn't mix well, never really gets into a typical kneading is kulli. Kulli was something that they would do. They would toast the wheat berries, which kept them, which sweetened them or made them really as a snack, and they would eat them whole. And sometimes they would grind it, but it's already toasted to the degree that it'll never really rise and never become a dough. So if somebody toasted this grain and now ground it up and made it into a flour, and there was a drink that they would make out of this, which was usually they would usually have it for medicinal, but they would also drink it or use it as a gravy. And so, are you allowed to do this on Shabbos? So it says the one opinion says you can add the water, but you can't mix it, and the other opinion says you're even allowed to mix it on Shabbos. Man yeshon. Now, whose opinion is this? That you even not only are you allowed to add the water to this kulli, which is the toasted flour, toasted wheat flour, but you're even allowed to mix it. Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda said that this is the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, which we were just talking about. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, because this is an abnormal way that he's going to do it, and therefore it's permissible. V'hanamili the mashani, because he did it in a different way, and since he's doing it in an abnormal way, it's going to be permissible because really it's not a proper way of making a dough anyhow, because it's never really going to become a dough. So therefore, if you did it in an abnormal way, so that's going to be permissible. Of course, if you made an actual dough with real flour and water, and you mix that, even if you did it in an abnormal way, and we'll see multiple shinuis, differences that you can make in making your mixtures, that's only going to be applicable when it's not really a dough. When you're therefore it wouldn't be the Torah prohibition anyhow, and therefore if you do it in an abnormal way, it's going to be permissible to be done, because the prohibition is a rabbinic prohibition. Amar Rav Chisda, so the Gemara says, Heich Mishani. So what kind of change, what kind of abnormalities are you going to do in this kneading, or it's not really kneading because it's never going to turn into a dough, but in this mixture of that, after he combines the water and the liquid and the flour or the dry, that he then mixes it. What difference would be in the mixing that would constitute that it's permissible to be done on Shabbos? He does small batches. He's not going to do a lot, but he put a little bit of this dry toasted this toasted wheat ground up, and you put some in a bowl and you add some water to it. So since it's a small batch, you never make a dough that way. That's one portion, so that's going to be permissible. It's sort of like making a porridge or farina. So typically you need hot water for that, and so that would be a cooking issue. But if you had something like that where it's just something dry and never going to become a dough, and you make small batch, that will be permissible. Vishavin, and they both agree that you're allowed to mix this shatis, which is this drink that would typically is made with water, oil, a brine, either vinegar or brine, and together with these toasted wheat berries that were ground up, and that you're allowed to be done on Shabbos. That's allowed to be mixed on Shabbos. And also, Mishas and Zaytum HaMitzri. And you're also allowed to drink this other drink, which was also a potion called Zaytum HaMitzri. And even though that typically that generally they would be had for a medicinal reason, since a lot of people do it also for non-medicinal reasons, so it's permissible, even though that generally we say unless somebody's ill, for a minor ailment, you're not supposed to do medicinal things on Shabbos because unless you're going to come to grind up and make the potion itself. And here you're allowed to do it because it's food. And as we saw many times already, that even medicinal things can be done if it is a typical food. But you said that you're not allowed to, you can add the water, but you can't mix it. So the distinction is going to be: is it a thick batter, so like a dough, or is it a loose batter, or like batter, and therefore it's going to be permissible? But even in a loose batter, it has to be that he does it in an abnormal way. And what would be an abnormal way? Atypical way. Generally, when you make this drink, this shasis, right? So generally what they would do is first they would put in the brine, the vinegar, and then they would add the dry. So in Shabbos you do the opposite. This is relevant for people making formula bottles, a mixture of dry and liquid. So it's never going to become a batter. So it's not going to be the Torah prohibition of kneading, but you are mixing a dry and a liquid. So do it in this abnormal way. And the abnormal way, the Gemara just says, is that if typically you put the water and then you put the dry, so then on Shabbos do it the opposite way. Levi bereder Rav Huna, Levi the son of Rav Huna, Barchia. Ashkeche legavla daveinash. He saw the caretaker of his father's animals. The kagavel v'safid leilatura. He saw him feeding his animals this mursan mixed with this bran mixed with water, but he saw him make that mixture on Shabbos. So he shoved him. He said, "What are you doing? It's Shabbos." Asavu ashkeche, right? So his father came and said, "Thank you very much for admonishing my employee. He knows what he's doing." Your mother's father, your grandfather, Omani, and now the Gemara interrupts. Who was this? So your grandfather said in the name of Rav Omanu, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, and it goes back to the quote that he said. He tells his son Levi, your grandfather, who is Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, said that you're allowed to mix them, but you can't stuff it into their mouth, which we saw in the previous Mishnah, that you can't force feed them in this level that they won't be able to bring it back up. And if it's a young calf that cannot sort of lick it up with its tongue, so then you're going to allow to feed it in its mouth, but again only to that level of mahalketin, which we saw last night, but not to the level of ma'amrim, which is stuffing it down. In any case, what he told him is that actually it's permissible. This that he said, this that the caretaker did of mixing the water with the mursanin, with this bran, and fed it to the animals is permissible. But it's true, the halacha is that it has to be that he does it in an abnormal way, and he did it in the opposite way. What difference did he make? Another distinction that can be made is that normally when he mixes it, he would stir it, and instead he would shake it. No, really, it's not shaken over here. It's shesiv erev. He would do X shapes, instead of mixing it in a circular motion, he would mix it in an X-shaped motion, which is going to be permissible. So, but yeah, he said, but you're never going to get it to mix properly if you do it that way. Here it comes to mix it, yeah, not stirred but mixed. So he pours it into another vessel and that mixes it. Now the Gemara is going to bring personal accounts that are written in various Chachamim's notebooks. As we've talked before, generally the students would take their own notes. Before the Mishnah was written, that's the way all of Torah Shabbat Peh went. People would write their own notes, and from there they would remember all the teachings. And then when the Romans forbade the academies and Torah was being lost, the Chachamim decided to disseminate the Torah by form of written oral Torah, and collected all of those accounts. And that concept of writing accounts continued, and even in the times of the Amoraim, as we'll see, there were accounts. And so the Gemara is going to bring various pinkasim, various notebooks, accounts or teachings from the various chachamim. So kasava pinkasei de Zeiri. In the pinkas, in the notebook of Zeiri, it says, Amris kadam Rebbe, I said in front of my teacher. Now the Gemara interrupts and says, who's the teacher? Umani Rabbi Chia. Who is it? It's Rabbi Chia. And he said, I asked him, Ma'u legabil, are you allowed to stir, mix on Shabbos? So he asked them this question of whether or not you're allowed to mix the shatisa, this drink. Amar Asa, he said it's prohibited. So Ma'u lefarik. He said, okay, so if you can't do that, what about can you put it inside in front of a vessel, in the trough, in front of the animals? Can I move the fodder, the feed, from one animal to another? So I already have this mixture of mursanim, or I have other animal feed, and I want to move it from one to another. He said that's allowed. And we saw a discussion about this earlier. Is there a problem of moving it's an extra work on Shabbos because I'm moving feed from one animal to another, which is not necessary, or maybe they won't eat it. Amar Rav Menashe, chad kame chad, trei kame trei, shaber. If you're moving from one animal to another single animal, that's permissible, or from two animals in front of two animals, permissible. Telasa kame trei. From three animals to two animals, prohibited, because that's more than that's necessary, and that's that's extra work on Shabbos, which is going to be prohibited. Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef says kav afilu kabayit. No difference. You can even put one or two kav, which is a large measure. And Ula took it one step further, and he says Ula amar kula afiru kurayim. You can even take even a larger measure than that. Another statement from the Pinkas. So Kasav Pinkas say the Levi. The previous one was from Ula's, from Zeiri's notebook. This one is from Levi. Levi taught, Amritz Kadam Rebbe. I sat in front of my teacher Rebbe, Umanu, and the Gemara interrupts and says, who is that? Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the holy teacher. This is Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, the compiler of the Mishnah. How the Havagavlin Shatisa Bavel. So he said that I reported to him that in Babylon, people were mixing the dry and liquid to make this drink shatisa, which we saw earlier. And Rebbe was upset about it and said it's prohibited. And here are these extra words which we already said. So this is a mistake here. And nobody would listen to him. So even though Rabbeinu HaKadosh said it's prohibited, in Bavel, nobody listened. And there was not enough power, even though he was the prince in Eretz Yisrael, he did not have the authority and the ability to change what was going on in Bavel. And so therefore he couldn't prohibit it. Lamesar. Why? And why was that? On account of what did they not follow Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the prince and the compiler of the Mishnah and the head of the academy in Eretz Yisrael? Because of the teaching of Rabbi Yosef Yehuda that we saw earlier, because he permitted it, and they followed that teaching, And so when Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi came and said it's prohibited, they said, okay, but we already have our Rabbi Yehuda that permitted it, and that's the way we've already been doing it, so we're not going to change. Rabbi Shua ben Levi. It was written in the Rabbi Shua ben Levi's notebook. Hayman the Bechad Shabbat. He wrote anybody that was born on the first day of Shabbos, meaning on a Sunday, Yehi Gaver, he's going to be a strong person, a personality with only one like him. So what does it mean that there's only one? It doesn't mean that there's not going to be any good in him. But Rav Ashi said he was born on Sunday. Must be that it's going to be no one as bad as him. Meaning it's all going to be bad. Rav Ashi said, I and Dimi bar Kukusa were born on the same day. We were born on Sunday. I became the head of the academy. And he became the head of the gangs, of the highway robbers. What it means, what he's going to be singular, is singular in the sense of it will be a consistent person, either consistently good or consistently not good. The Gemara over here in the parentheses has a version that says that the reason is because light and dark were created on the Sunday. Hayman the betray b'Shabbat. Further, Rabbi Shua Levi wrote in his notebooks: anybody born on Monday, Yegava Ragza, will be a person that is easy to anger. My time because the water was split, so he was born on a day of conflict. Hayman the betlasa b'Shabbat. Anybody born on a Tuesday, Yegava Atir, he will be a wealthy person. V'zanai, and it will be someone who is a philanderer, somebody who follows his heart's desires. My timer. What's the reason? Because grass was created on that day. Now, grass is something that's very, very thin and small and can break through the ground. So that's a strong power, and therefore it breaks barriers. And so that's this idea. That's what Rashi says. Others say because the only one of the creatures that it doesn't say leminehu, the only part of creation doesn't say to its kind is grass, and grass is a constantly mix of grass within the field. It doesn't stick to its kind, and therefore it is this person will also be wealthy because there's plenty of it, but also follow his heart's desires and break through what would be appropriate boundaries. Anybody born on Wednesday, Yegavar Chakim will be a wise person, v'nohir, and an illuminate. Right? Why? My time in Mishum the Itl Ma'uris, because it's the day that the sun and the moon were placed in their orbit. Anybody born on Thursday, the 5th day of Shabbos, Yegavar Gumach Hasadim will be a kind person. My timer, because birds and fish were created on that day, which live by the kindness of Hashem. In other words, their food is always available to them. I'm on the Mamali Shabbos. Anybody born on Friday, Negavar Chazra is going to be someone who follows after, who follows up. What does that mean? He follows up on mitzvahs, meaning he's always looking for mitzvahs to do. Hayman the B'Shabsa, somebody was born on Shabbos. Yehev Shabbos, Yomas. He's going to die on Shabbos as well. Al deichlu alavei Yom Rabba. Yom Rabba the Shabbos, because on account of his birth, Shabbos was desecrated. This great day of Shabbos was desecrated. Amar Rav Barav Shila. Rabbi Bar Shila said, actually, a Kedisha Rabbi Yiskari. He's going to be called a very holy person because he was born on a day of holiness. Amalu Rav Chanina. So Rav Chanina said after the notebook of Rabbi Shua ben Levi was read with all these teaching, Huku Amr Leila Bar Levi. Go tell Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Go tell the son of Levi. Lo Mazel Yom Gorim. No, it's not the mazel, an energetic flow, if you would. of the day that causes this, elam mazel shah, but rather it depends on the hour of the day. And so it doesn't matter which day of the week a person was born, but rather what was the energetic flow, what was the mazel at the hour that he was born. And this is Rabbi Hanina's teaching of what these mazel is. Somebody born in the mazel of Chama, when the sun is in it has the hour. Negvar zivtan is going to have a ray, a shine and ray. He's going to be able to sustain himself and eat from his own, and drink of his own. But all of his secrets are going to be known. He's going to be a known person, like the sun. And therefore, if he's a thief, he won't succeed. Good advice. Anybody born on at the time that Kochav Noga, the star called Noga, is in the astrological strength. So Yehigavar Atir, so he's going to be the wealthy person, Vazanoi, and he's going to be the one that follows his heart, even breaking boundaries. My time, what's the reason? Because a fire was born with him. Haiman the Bekochav, somebody that's born at the time that the Kochav is in the astrological strength. Yehigavar Nohir is going to be an illuminating person, Vachakim and wise, Mishum the Safra the Chamahu, because this star follows the sun's orbit, right? It follows the sun's astrological movements, and therefore it is a co-illuminator together with the sun, and therefore this person will be wise. Haiman the Belavana, somebody that was born when the moon is in its astrological strength, it's in its mazel. So Yehegavar Savil, Marin is going to be someone who is going to have difficulties in life. He's going to have good moments, but difficult moments, because it'll go up and down like the moon. Banai v'satir, he's going to build, and then you're going to have to tear down. Satir banai, tear down and then build. Achil deloy delay, and will eat that which is not his own. In other words, he's going to need help to sustain himself. Delay and drink that's not its own, like the moon that doesn't have its own light but illuminates light from others. But his secrets are going to be hidden. And therefore, if he's a thief, he will be successful. I'm on the Shabtai. Somebody born when Shabtai is the mazel. So it's a person whose thoughts are going to be for naught. Some say no, not his thoughts are going to be for naught, but all those that scheme against him. Those are going to be for naught and never succeed against him. Somebody born when the tzedek hour is. So Yehi Gavra Tzadkin is going to be a person that's righteous. And righteous in mitzvahs. Hayman the Ma'adim, somebody born in Ma'adim when Mars, when the blood star is in the mazel. Say Hegvar Ashid Dama, somebody that's going to cause bloodletting. Amar Rashi says he can either be a mohil, a ganva, or a thief, and then by causing pain and injury or murder, that's how he's going to do bloodletting. Itafka, or he can be a shochet, imala, or a mohil. So you can either be a doctor, a thief, a butcher, or a mohil. Amar Rava, Anaba Madim. So Rava said, I was born in Madim. Amar Abaye, and he said it as if like, and I didn't know any of these. Amar Abaye said, yeah, but you were the head of the academy, and you're the head of the Beis Din, and therefore you had to order punishment of people. So Mar Nami Anish V'Katil. So you did punish people and cause either their injury or their death, and therefore you are also in that category. Itmar Chanina Mazel Machkim Mazel Mashir Veish Mazel Yisrael. So Chanina, as we just see in this teaching from Chanina says that Am Yisrael is also under a order of mazel, of this astrological nature of flow, and therefore that causes wealth, that causes wisdom, and there's a mazel to Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan Amei mazel Yisrael. However, Rabbi Yochanan says no, Am Yisrael is not under mazel because we can daven, we do mitzvahs, and that changes whatever energetic flow may be there. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan says, how do we know that there is no such thing as mazel for Yisrael? For it says, so says Hashem, don't learn the paths of the nations, and the signs of the heavens, do not fear them. Because it is the non-Jews, the nations, that are afraid of them. They are afraid. Israel has no reason to be afraid because you daven, you do a mitzvah, and that changes everything. But Rab also is of the opinion, no mazel for Yisrael. We don't have to worry about it because doing good will change it. A person could change their own mazel. As Yehuda said in the name of Rab, how do we know that Yisrael does not have mazel? For it says, Hashem says to Avram Avinu, Avram says, what are you going to give me? I don't have an inheritor as a son, the son that inherit me. My domestic help is going to inherit me. What can you give me? But Hashem took him outside. So what does it mean took him outside? Hashem said before Avram said before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribbonu Shel Olam, Master of the universe. Ben Beisi Yoroshosi. It is the custodian of my house. He's the one that's going to inherit me. He said, no, that's not true. No, the one that comes out of your womb, your loins, is going to be your inheritor. Amar Lofan of Rabbi Shalom, he said to him, Master of the universe, thanks Hashem, but I know what my zodiac says, and I just simply am not going to have a son. No, leave the zodiac, leave your astrology. She'ein mazel Yisrael, because there is no mazel that doesn't dictate what happens to you. My daitach, what are you afraid of? And now we go to Kufnun Vavam and base 156b. What are you afraid of? The Koybet Tzedek, because you were born when Tzedek is B'marav on the west side, and there for whatever reason that causes that you can't have children. I moved Tzedek to the east side and can move stars around, change the energetic flow for you, and then you will have children. This is what it says: Mi Mizrach Tzedek, who illuminated Tzedek, this star, Mi Mizrach, from the east side, which usually is on the west side, and who changed that Yikra'eu l'raglo and called it to his feet, meaning he called it to go in the direction on account of him to change direction. And also from a story of Shmuel, we know that there is no mazel for Yisrael. The Shmuel v'Avlet Aviyasi. Shmuel and Avlet, the Gemara brings multiple times that they would sit together. Avlet was a philosopher, astrologer, non-Jew, and Shmuel was a astrologer and a chacham, one of the chachamim, and they would sit together. And the Gemara brings multiple conversations that they had. And here's one: There was a fellow walking to a swamp. Amar Avlet. Avlet said, "L'Shmuel, Hai Gavra Azil v'Le'asi." This guy's going out there, but he's not going to come back. Tarach le'chivya mayis, because he's going to be bitten by a snake and he's going to die. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, perhaps. However, Ibar Yisrael, if he's a Jew, Azil v'Asi, he's going to go and come back. Adi Yasvi Azil v'Asi. Well, they were still sitting there, and this guy's walking back. Come, Avlet Shadi Latuni. So Avlet said, "Wait 1 second, fella. I need to check your bundle of reeds that you just got from the swamp." And Ashkach be'chivya, the pasuk v'shadi v'tarte guve, and he found that in amongst the reeds was a poisonous snake that he had when he used a sickle to cut down some of the reeds. Unbeknownst to him, he cut down a snake with it, and in the bundle was the snake cut in half. Amalei Shmuel, my avdus. Shmuel said to this fellow who had gathered the reeds, Tell me a little bit about your life. Amalei kol yom have a maramina and rifta b'hadi adadi. Well, every day we go out to the field and everybody puts in bread and then we sort of join a meal together. Nachlina he'idna have a ikachad minon. However, today I realized that there was somebody there that was so poor, he just didn't have any bread. He couldn't offer anything. He didn't have bread. And he was embarrassed. So I said, you know what? Today I'm gathering the bread. I'm going to be the one to gather from everyone. When I came to that fellow who I realized could not afford the bread, I made it look like I was taking bread from him, so he shouldn't be embarrassed, and then I put in my own bread. You see, you did a mitzvah, and on account of that, you saved your life. Shmuel went out and he said a drash. The pasuk says in Mishlei, and tzedakah saves of death. Not only it doesn't only save from a abnormal death. It saves from death literally because the righteousness of that act changed his mazel or protected him from his mazel. And similarly, we have another story like that from Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Akiva Nami Mazel Yisrael. Rabbi Akiva also has that there's no Mazel Yisrael. The Rabbi Akiva, Havali Brate. Rabbi Akiva had a daughter, Amri Le Kaldai, and the stargazers said to Rabbi Akiva, the day of her wedding, Tarakla Chivya, she will be bitten by a snake and die, Omisa, and she's going to die. The Igam Amil Satuva. So Rabbi Akiva was concerned about it, but he didn't stop and change what he was doing. But he was concerned that there's something, what would happen. On that very day after her wedding, she took her tiara off and had two pins in it, and to which she would stick in her hair to keep it in place. And she took it off and dasta beguda, and she stuck it into the fence, the rock fence outside of her home. Isrami Esa be'ena de chivya, and it worked out that unbeknownst to her, as she stuck it into the stone wall, that she poked it into the eyes of a snake. Latzafra in the morning, kikashaklala, when she wanted to take it out of the fence and go. So have a kasarich. She realized that out came with it a dead snake. So she showed it to her father and said, "Look, this fortuitous thing happened, that I saved my life by sticking this into the brick wall." So father said, "My obvious, tell me tell me something great that you did that may have been the merit to change your mazel, because the snake was there, in this mazel, like the stargazer said, but you changed it." Amrale, she said to him, "Apanya asa ani." At the wedding in the evening, a poor man came, Karabava, and he was knocking at the door. And everybody was so busy with the meal and with the festivities, and nobody even heard him, so nobody could take care of him. So I got up, I took my portion of food, that was given to me, and and I gave it to him to eat. Amar Allah, so Rabbi Akiva said to his daughter, "Wow, what a great mitzvah you did, mitzvah of this, and with that you saved your life." Nafik Rabbi Akiva v'darash tzedakah tatzavim mavis. Rabbi Akiva went out and said a drash on this pasuk. Tzedakah saves from death, not only from an abnormal death, from death itself. Well, Nachman Yitzchak also, there's a teaching that there's no mazel to Yisrael. The Nachman Yitzchak, because the mother of Nachman Yitzchak, Amar le Kaldai, the stargazer said, "Brech gan v'hama, your son is going to be a thief." So she said, "All right, well, I'm going to do everything to educate him and teach him to have your Shemayim and to recognize Hashem and be and act appropriately. I'm not going to allow that to dictate his life." So she never let him not walk out without a head covering, and she would always say to him, "Cover your head," which will remind you that you should have an awe and fear of heaven wherever you do and whenever you go. And additionally, she would pray But he never knew why his mother always said, "Come on, cover your head, put on your head covering." Yom Echad, one day, Yosef Kagaris, to say Dikla, one day he was sitting and learning beneath a palm tree. Nafal Galima Me'alave, and his head covering fell off. Me'alave Reshi from his head. Dolieni, and he looked up at that moment. Chazil Dikla, he saw the palm tree laden with fruit. Alme Yitzrei, he got this great urge, and Solik Paske Lekibura Beshine, and he climbed up to get a fruit with his teeth. In other words, that's how strong his urge was when he didn't have the teaching of his mother to have Yirah Shamayim. So you see that even though that was within his nature, as the stargazers told his mother, nevertheless, the davening of his mother and the education and the reminders that his mother gave him was able to change his ways. So too, good deeds and tefillah changes mazel, and therefore there's no mazel to Yisrael. Yisrael does not have a bad mazel because we can change it with tefillah and tzedakah and good deeds. Okay, we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow for the last daf, and tomorrow Be'ez Hashem we will complete Masechah Shabbos and begin.